Why is there a whale on it? 10-year-old Leo, an orphan, wondered as he picked up an old compass on the docks. He was stunned to realize it's the exact same symbol I carved for my little sister, Stella, years ago. But that was just the beginning. What happened next would leave everyone speechless. From a distance, a craftsman named David stood frozen, his heart clenched as he saw the boy holding his daughter's only keepsake. Little did he know, the compass he had accidentally dropped was about to unearth a painful truth, a loss buried for years, and connect two strangers in the most unexpected of ways. While you wait to see what happens next, if you're enjoying this story, please support us with a subscribe and a like. We'd love it if you'd leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. David ran his hand over the small wooden sailboat one last time. "There you are, Lily," he whispered, as if his daughter was still right beside him. He carefully opened an old velvet box. Inside lay the brass compass, Lily's last memento. He turned it over, gazing at the clumsily carved whale on the back. He still remembered her words as if it were yesterday. "So you never lose your way home, Daddy." "I won't, my sweet girl," David said softly, then gently placed the compass inside the boat's cabin. He didn't secure it, merely nestled it inside, like a tiny passenger on a memorial voyage. He cradled the boat, his heart heavy, and walked out onto the pier. The sea breeze was stronger than usual. As he neared the end of the pier, a loud blast from a nearby ferry horn suddenly pierced the air. David flinched, stumbling slightly. In that brief moment of imbalance, the small brass compass silently slid out of the boat's cabin. It landed on the wooden planks with a faint clink, a sound swallowed by the lingering echo of the horn and the crashing waves, before rolling directly into a gap between two boards. David let out a breath, gathering himself. He was completely unaware of what had just happened. Looking down at the boat, still intact in his hands, he continued to the edge of the pier. He knelt and gently set the boat upon the water. "Go find your mother and sister, Lily," he said, his voice hoarse. He watched it drift further and further away, believing his most precious memento was sailing with it. He had no idea that he had just sent an empty vessel on its way, while the true treasure had been left behind, resting silently in the darkness between the planks. Hours later, as the sun began to cast long shadows, the docks were once again bustling with laborers. "Get a move on, you lazy brat," his uncle's harsh voice barked. "Clean up this mess of torn nets, or you'll go hungry tonight." Leo bit his lip and quietly hauled the heavy, tangled nets. He was used to the scolding and the gnawing hunger. To his uncle, Mark, he was nothing more than an unpaid worker. While sweeping debris near the edge of the pier, Leo's broom scraped against something metallic, making a soft clink. He looked down curiously into the gap between two wooden planks. A round, brass object was faintly gleaming. The boy nimbly used a small stick to pry it out. It was an old compass, and it looked valuable. Leo's heart pounded. This must be worth a good bit of money, he thought, an image of a warm loaf of bread flashing in his mind, enough to eat well for a few days, at least. But as he turned the compass over in his palm, his hand froze. The boy's eyes widened. On the back of the tarnished brass was a small, crudely carved image of a whale, whimsical and achingly familiar. Leo was stunned. He remembered it vividly. Using his late father's small knife, he had carved the exact same figure onto a little wooden boat for his sister, Stella, just before the storm came and swept her away forever. "Stella," Leo whispered, the name a fresh stab of pain in his heart. "What are you dawdling for over there?" His uncle's voice boomed from behind, laced with suspicion. "Find something? Let me see." Leo jumped. His first instinct was to clench his fist around the compass and shove it deep into the pocket of his tattered pants. "Nothing, Uncle," he stammered, his voice trembling slightly. "It's just a pretty seashell." His uncle shot him a glare before turning away. Leo let out a quiet sigh of relief, but his chest was a tangled mess of emotions. This compass was no longer just an item to be sold for cash. It was a mystery, a thread connecting him to the memory of his lost sister. Why was his carving on this compass, and who did it belong to? That night, sleep wouldn't come. Leo lay curled up on his thin straw mattress, one hand under his head, the other clutching the compass in his pocket. A sliver of moonlight slipped through a crack in the wooden wall, casting a silver line across the floor. Hunger pangs twisted in his gut. He thought of the pawnbroker at the end of the street. "Just take it to him," a voice in his head whispered. "You'll have money for bread, for hot soup. Uncle Mark will never know." But then he pulled the compass out again. In the moonlight, the little whale seemed to swim on the brass surface. The memory of Stella flooded back. He remembered how she had beamed when he'd finished the carving for her. Selling this, wouldn't that be like selling the last piece of her he had left? No, Leo told himself firmly. I have to find its owner. I have to know why they have my drawing. His mind was made up. The gnawing hunger seemed to recede, replaced by a strange, new sense of determination. The next morning, under the cover of a thick mist and his Uncle Mark's steady snores, Leo crept out of bed. He shoved a piece of stale bread into his pocket, along with the precious compass, and slipped out of the house, holding his breath. He started his search on the docks, right where he'd found it. He hesitantly approached a busy fishmonger. "Excuse me, sir," Leo asked, his voice soft. "Have you heard of anyone losing a compass? It has a whale carved on it." The fishmonger shot him a dismissive glance and waved him away. "No idea. Now get out of here, kid. You're in the way." Leo trudged away, the first pang of disappointment settling in. He asked a few more people, but was met with only shakes of the head or indifferent stares. Just as he was about to approach a group of fishermen mending their nets, a burly, grim-faced man blocked his path. His eyes were fixed on the compass in Leo's hand. "Hey, kid, where'd you get that?" he growled. I found it," Leo stammered, intimidated. "I'm trying to find who it belongs to." The man scoffed. "Return it. A ragged little thing like you. You stole it, didn't you?" With that, he reached out to snatch the compass. "Give it here." "I didn't," Leo cried out, panicking. He clutched the compass to his chest and shrank back. "I didn't steal it." "Thief." The accusation rang out, drawing the suspicious stares of onlookers. Terrified, Leo shoved the man with all his might and bolted. He ran for his life, not daring to look back, the man's curses and the weight of their judging eyes hot on his heels. He ran until he stumbled into a small alley, exhausted, his heart hammering against his ribs. The boy sank to the ground, gasping for breath as tears welled in his eyes. Why did doing the right thing have to be so hard? Leo shuffled out of the alley, his heart heavy. He didn't dare go back to the docks. What was he supposed to do now? Returning the compass felt like an impossible mission. He wandered aimlessly down the coastal road, his mind a blank slate. He passed a small cottage with fishing nets, laid out to dry on the porch. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes sat on a wooden chair, her hands deftly mending a tear in one of the nets. Noticing Leo's small, forlorn figure, she called out gently, "Hello there, little one. Come rest for a moment. You look awfully tired." Startled, Leo reflexively took a step back. He was terrified, expecting to be yelled at again. Seeing the boy's fear, the woman offered a warm smile. "Don't be afraid. I'm Marie. I won't hurt you. Would you like some water? You look parched." The kindness in her voice was disarming. Leo hesitantly approached. Marie poured him a cool glass of water. After gulping it down in one go, Leo mustered all his courage and held out the compass. "Ma'am, do you know who this belongs to?" he asked in a small voice. "I found it, and I want to return it to its owner." Marie's hands, busy with the net, suddenly stilled. She squinted at the object in the boy's hand, and then her eyes widened in astonishment. "Good heavens," she breathed. "Let me see." Leo placed the compass in her palm. Marie turned it over, her trembling finger tracing the little whale carving. A shadow of sadness crossed her face. "I know this compass," she said, her voice dropping low. "It belongs to Mr. David." "David?" Leo's head snapped up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Where is he?" Marie pointed toward a distant hill, where a small, solitary wooden house overlooked the sea. "He's a craftsman, lives up there all by himself. A very lonely, heartbroken man." She looked deep into Leo's eyes, her own full of sympathy. This compass, it was the last memento of his daughter. She was lost in a storm at sea many years ago. Leo nodded, his heart filled with resolve. "I understand. Thank you, ma'am. I'll take it up the hill to him right now." He turned to leave, but Marie's gentle voice stopped him. "Wait, dear." Leo paused and looked back at her. Marie was watching him with a strange expression, a mix of pity and hesitation. "This story, it might be a bit more complicated than you think," she said slowly. "David's daughter was named Lily, and she wasn't lost alone." Leo stared, confused. "She wasn't?" Marie looked him straight in the eye, her next question almost a whisper. Are you Leo, Stella's brother?" The question hit Leo like a physical blow. He froze, every muscle in his body tensing. It had been so long since anyone had spoken his sister's name. How do you know my name? And my sister's?" Marie let out a long, weary sigh, one that held years of sorrow. "Because, Leo, the little girl who was with Lily on that boat during the storm was your sister, Stella." Leo's world shattered. A ringing filled his ears, drowning out everything else. The compass suddenly felt impossibly heavy in his hand. He stammered, the words catching in his throat. "No, that's not possible. My sister." The memories flooded back in a torrential rush. The little wooden boat Stella had adored, the whale he had carved. Everything suddenly, painfully, clicked into place. "The whale carving," he whispered. Marie nodded sadly, a silent confirmation of it all. "Yes, David knew. He knew his daughter had set sail with your sister. He has lived with the guilt of not stopping them in time ever since." She paused, giving Leo a moment to absorb the horrifying truth. Then she continued, her voice laced with sorrow. "Those little wooden boats he makes and sets adrift every day, they aren't just for Lily. He makes them in memory of both children." Leo stood frozen, tears now streaming down his face. He was no longer just an orphan trying to do a good deed. He and the lonely craftsman on the hill were strangers, yet they were bound together by the same ache, the same inconsolable loss. The path up the hill was steep and rocky, but Leo didn't feel the strain. He walked with a pounding heart, Marie's words echoing in his mind. The grief of losing his sister now mingled with a strange sense of connection to the man he had never met. Finally, he reached the small wooden house. The workshop door was ajar. Inside, Leo could see a man with salt and pepper hair, his back to the door. He was intently carving a piece of wood, his posture radiating a profound loneliness. It had to be David. Leo took a deep breath to steady his nerves and timidly stepped toward the entrance. "Sir," he called out, his voice small and trembling. David started, unused to visitors. He turned, his tired, sad eyes falling on the unfamiliar boy standing in his doorway. His expression hardened slightly, a clear sign he didn't want to be disturbed. "What is it, boy?" His voice was raspy and blunt. Leo said nothing, simply walking forward. He held out his small hand, palm open. The old brass compass rested there silently. David's gaze locked onto it instantly. The hardness in his face vanished, replaced by speechless shock. The hand holding his carving tool began to tremble. He slowly set the chisel down on the workbench. That was all David could manage. He looked up at Leo, his eyes full of disbelief and scrutiny. The sadness was now mixed with suspicion. Where did you get this?" Leo met his gaze, his voice still shaky but earnest. "I found it at the dock, sir. It was between the wooden planks." David remained silent, carefully taking the compass from Leo's hand. He turned it over, his thumb stroking the familiar shape of the whale. A flicker of relief crossed his face, quickly followed by confusion. A poor boy like this. Why hadn't he sold it? Why bring it back? David asked, a hint of skepticism still in his voice. This is worth a fair bit. Leo shook his head. I couldn't sell it, because I knew it was important to someone. Leo's simple, honest answer seemed to strike a chord with David. The wall of ice he had built around himself for years began to crack. He looked at the boy again, no longer with suspicion, but with genuine curiosity. For the first time in a long, long time, he saw something beyond his own pain. He saw kindness. David still clutched the compass, his gaze lost in some distant memory. Yes, he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. It's very important. It was a gift from my daughter. Seeing David's expression, Leo summoned the courage to ask the question that had been burning inside him. Sir, why is there a whale on it? David looked up, slightly surprised by the boy's question. That was my daughter Lily's drawing. She loved whales. Leo took a deep breath. This was it. He looked directly into the craftsman's sad eyes. No, sir, the boy said firmly. It's my drawing. I carved it with a knife onto a little wooden boat for my sister, Stella. Each of Leo's words was like a small hammer blow to David's mind. He stood utterly still, his eyes wide, staring unblinking at the boy. Stella? He repeated the name, a name he hadn't spoken aloud in years, but had never forgotten. Yes, Leo nodded, tears welling in his eyes again. Marie told me. She said my sister and your daughter, they were on that boat together. A profound silence filled the workshop. David stared at the boy before him, the messy hair, the worn clothes, and the eyes that held the very same sorrow as his own. All the scattered pieces suddenly slammed together into a single, heartbreaking picture. This boy, the honest child who had returned his most cherished keepsake, was Stella's brother. He understood everything. The whale carving hadn't belonged to Lily or Stella alone. It was their shared symbol, a mark of an innocent friendship that had ended in tragedy. So it was you, David whispered, his voice trembling. The compass in his hand was no longer a simple memento. It was fate. It had been lost only to be found by the one person in the world who could fully understand its meaning. It had guided two shattered souls, two seemingly unconnected people, to find each other in an ocean of loneliness. He slowly stepped forward and placed a large, calloused hand on Leo's small, bony shoulder. Instead of flinching in fear as he usually would, Leo felt a strange warmth, a sense of safety he had never known. Where do you live? David asked, the distance gone from his voice. I live with my uncle, Mark, down at the docks, Leo mumbled, but I don't want to go back there. A familiar fear flickered in the boy's eyes. David looked deep into those eyes and saw a reflection of himself, a lost soul, yearning for a place to belong. He didn't need to think for another second. The decision came to him as naturally as breathing, as if it had been preordained. Then, stay here with me, David said, his voice resolute. Leo's head shot up, his eyes wide with disbelief. He couldn't trust what he had just heard. Stay here. David nodded, a sad but genuine smile gracing his lips for the first time in years. Yes, I've been alone for too long, Leo. This grief, it's too heavy for one person to carry. But maybe if two of us share it, it'll be a little lighter. He looked out toward the distant sea, the very one that had taken their loved ones. Maybe Lily and Stella wanted us to find each other, to look after each other. Tears streamed down Leo's cheeks again, but this time they were tears of happiness and hope. He was speechless, managing only a small nod, a nod that said everything. David led Leo inside. He placed the compass on the workbench, right beside the half-finished sailboat. The keepsake of the past was no longer just a symbol of loss, but a compass pointing toward a new future. From now on, David said, it will guide us both. The soft light of the setting sun filled the workshop, wrapping around the two figures, one large and one small, standing side by side. The house on the hill no longer felt empty. Out of the broken pieces of their sorrow, A new family had been formed, ready to walk the path of healing together. In the days that followed, the workshop on the hill was no longer silent. The solitary sound of David's chisel was now joined by the bright sound of Leo's laughter. Together, they built a new sailboat, slightly larger than the previous ones. When the boat was finished, David didn't place the compass inside alone. He handed it to Leo. "This time, let's put it in together," he said. Two sets of hands, one large and one small, placed the keepsake in the boat's cabin together. They carried it to the pier together, to the very spot where David had once stood alone. But this time, they didn't release the boat as a final farewell. They tied a long cord to it, letting it bob on the waves nearby, a promise that they would always be here, together. The sea was still there, holding the memory of Lily and Stella within its depths. But now, for David and Leo, it was no longer just a place of loss. It was a witness to a new family finding its safe harbor, guided by a lost compass and the priceless gift of kindness.